Good day everyone, this is I Love Recap for you. In an alternate timeline, the United States and Russia are still at odds. A full-fledged war is not an option for either of them, so they have resorted to spying. However, traditional spies have also become outdated and easy to catch, so the Russians have formed a group of female spies who have mastered the art of seduction. They find their targets, seduce them, have coitus with them, and then extract the necessary information. Sounds like a nice deal for the victims. The opening scene introduces Dominika Egorova, a prominent ballet dancer from Russia who has been dancing and caring for her ailing mother since her teens. One day, Dominika entrusts her mother to a caretaker and heads to work, where she meets with various guests, including her uncle Ivan, who serves as the deputy director of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service SVR. During the meet and greet, a gangster, shortly after the performance begins, a man named Dmitry Ustinov asks Dominika for a picture and uses the opportunity to inappropriately touch her. Dominika dances beautifully, impressing the audience. But soon her dance partner jumps and lands on her leg, breaking it badly. As a result, Dominika is rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. Following this, we are introduced to Nate Nash, a CIA operative who is scheduled to see someone in Moscow. One of his assets in Gorky Park is abruptly confronted by the police, prompting him to think on his feet. Nate creates a distraction by firing shots at the ground, ensuring the safety of the Russian mole codenamed Marble, who escapes unidentified. However, during the chaos, Nate is apprehended by authorities and escorted to the safety of the American embassy, where he meets his superiors, who inform him that Marble is safe, but he is to be deported back to the United States as a result of his mistake. The next day, Ivan pays a visit to the director of the SVR and General Vladimir Korchnoi. They show him video footage of Nate's meeting in Gorky Park and explain that their primary interest lies in the unidentified individual. The scene then shifts back to Dominika, who wakes up in a hospital bed to discover that her leg is now encased in a metal frame. She is devastated when she realizes. Months pass, but Dominika is still walking with the aid of a cane. One day, Uncle Ivan pays her a visit and reveals that her replacement has been found, which means that her workplace will no longer provide her with any benefits. He offers to assist Dominika and asks her to come to him once she's ready. Before leaving, he hands her an envelope containing intimate pictures of her former dance partner and her replacement, as well as a recording of their conversation in which her partner indicates that she caused the accident on purpose so that his girlfriend might take her place. Dominika is enraged by this revelation, so she rushes to the theater to keep an eye on her former partner and his girlfriend. After watching them practice, she follows them to the steam room, where they begin making out. In a fit of rage, Dominika attacks them with her cane, exacting her vengeance. Phone booth and reports the incident as an accident. Hoopsie. After this, Dominika turns to her uncle for help. He agrees to his sister, but only if she returns the favor. The SVR is interested in gaining more information on the gangster from earlier, Dmitry, so he asks Dominika to befriend him and earn his trust using her feminine charms. Though hesitant to, Dominika has no other choice as her mother's medical expenses are far too high. Dominika goes to the hotel where Dmitry is staying, dressed beautifully, and heads to the bar to catch his eye. As she expected, Dmitry approaches her and asks how he can assist her. She expresses her desire to feel special once again, and they proceed to a private room, leaving Dmitry's guards outside. After a while, he asks her to undress and immediately gets to work like a madman. Enters the room and murders Dmitry. The intruder then throws a coat at Dominika to cover her bloodied body and rescues her through the back door. The man turns out to be an SVR agent named Konstantin, sent by Ivan. Shortly after, Ivan comes to Dominika and presents her with a choice: either become an SVR operative or face execution for witnessing Dmitry's murder. As expected, she chooses to work for them. School 4 specializes in teaching Sparrow's SVR operatives to lure its targets using sex espionage. "I'm sorry, that was awesome." Upon her arrival, she is greeted by Matron, the headmistress of Sparrow, who gives her a new identity and leads her inside. The next day, classes begin, and Matron delivers a speech on the current world chaos, emphasizing how Russia is the only country willing to make sacrifices to fix it. She also announces that she is pregnant. In the next scene, Nate meets with a CIA panel who decides to suspend him for his blunder in Russia. However, Nate argues that he has worked with Marble for years and that no one else can be trusted. His plea is eventually taken into consideration, and he is given a second chance to redeem himself. Nate is then assigned to the closest city to re-establish touch with Marvel is Budapest, but their every move is being observed by the SVR back in state school for matron teaches. The Sparrows learn how to discern what their target wants by displaying many images on television and asking them to indicate their desires. The first is replied incorrectly by a pompous student named Victor, and Dominika corrects him, making him a laughingstock in front of everyone else. Female student correctly guesses the second and is summoned to the front of the class in order to satisfy a guy. The girl gets down on her knees but she is unable to do so. The following day the students are asked to welcome a troop of soldiers who have recently returned from combat. Dominika selects a young man and takes him to a private room where she pleases him. Later the performance is observed by matron, and the other students. Matron comments on, Dominika's performance was good, but she still hasn't learned to give herself up after class, as Dominika is taking a shower. Big Victor comes from behind and tries to assault her, but she bravely defends herself by hitting him with a water tap. This incident causes a huge uproar, and General Vladimir himself arrives at the school to investigate. Students in the following class. While Vladimir watches through a CCTV camera, matron calls Dominika to the front and shows her a picture of Victor and asks her to identify his desires. Just then, Victor is brought into the room and matron orders Dominika to give him what he wants. Our protagonist undresses herself and sits on the table with her legs open, begging him to take her. Without ever touching her, he departs. Dominika then responds to matron's question by saying he wants power, which impresses Vladimir enough that he assigns her to a mission in Budapest where her task is to gain Nate's trust and reveal Marvel's identity. While you're at it, masculate a few more jerks. Accepting the mission, Dominika travels to Budapest and shares an apartment with another Sparrow. Marta worked at the SVR station under the command of Chief Maxim Volandov. Then she starts following Nate and goes to the same swimming pool where he goes. She intentionally bumps into him and has a brief chat pretending to be a translator for the embassy. The next day Dominika goes to the swimming pool but doesn't find Nate there. It turns out that Nate has already figured out that she's a Russian spy trying to uncover Marvel's identity. He reports this to his superiors and recognizes her potential. When his superiors learn of this, they give him permission to get closer to Dominika in order to gather additional information. Later, Dominika enters the embassy and discovers Marta conversing with an American politician named Stephanie Boucher. Soon after, Nate approaches Dominika and confesses to snatching her ID from the pool. She reveals her true objectives, recognizing that he is aware of her mission. After a brief talk, the two agree to meet for dinner the next evening. The next day, after work, Dominika returns to her apartment and investigates Marta's room, where she discovers that Marta has been entrusted with purchasing secret information from Stephanie. Chief Maxim takes her to a club and asks him to give her more time by sending a favorable report to Moscow. To force him to do so, Dominika prods him into assaulting her, and now that his behavior has been caught on video, she blackmails him into delivering a better report or else she'll turn him in to the cops. Meanwhile, Nate is waiting for her at the restaurant, but when she doesn't show up for a long time, he leaves, figuring she deserted him without his knowledge. Dominika follows him to his apartment, rings the doorbell, and he lets her in quietly. Nate quickly asks how she located his place, and Dominika cranks up the TV level to ensure that they are not overheard before asking him about it. What happened in Gorky Park? Dominika receives an unexpected visit from Ivan, who wants to check on her progress. With Nate feeling pressured to buy more time, she makes up a lie and tells him that she's also working on Stephanie's case with Marta but will require additional funding. Ivan considers it and decides to leave for the time being. His coat. Dominika sneaks a glance at his passport to gather intelligence on him. Later that evening, Dominika gets home to find Marta's lifeless body in the bathtub. Before she can realize what occurred, Konstantin, the same SVR agent from earlier, arrives from behind and grabs her by the neck, explaining that this is what happens to people who divulge secrets. Meanwhile, Nate informs his supervisors about Marvel's new message, which verifies Dominika's status, the Sparrow. Despite the fact that his superiors regard her as a threat, Nate believes she is still recruitable. The following evening, he invites Dominika to her apartment and explains that he knows her true identity. Dominika, in turn, tells her narrative, emphasizing that her only concern is the protection of her mother. Nate then offers her a chance to become a double agent for him, guaranteeing her security in exchange. Dominika questions whether she can trust him, and Nate tells her that she can. And the two become intimate. In the morning, Dominika meets with Nate's superiors, who subject her to a lie detector test to assess her reliability. Is this film a poorly patched together espionage narrative that uses your body to sell tickets? Yes, sir, she is telling the truth when she says she can buy them after passing the test. Stephanie Boucher informs us that Dominika will travel to London with Maxim on Friday to meet Stephanie and carry out the transaction. She stays in a hotel room that the CIA has specially prepared for her, complete with security cameras and a set of discs hidden under a desk that she can swap for the real ones later. Shortly after Stephanie arrives at the hotel, Dominika approaches her, claiming that she was sent by Marta, and Stephanie hands over the discs in exchange for the money. Stephanie realizes she's being watched by American intelligence agents after the deal and throws the money in the trash. She tries to cross the street but ends up getting hit by a truck and dying on the spot. Russian agents monitoring the entire incident assumed that their operation had been jeopardized. They also suspect that Dominika and Maxim were the ones who tipped off the Americans, so the two are ordered to return to Moscow. Upon their arrival, Ivan seizes the discs and apprehends both Dominika and Nate. Despite their protests of innocence, they endure excruciating torture for days, and Maxim is even executed. But Dominika remains steadfast in her denial of involvement with the Americans. And Ivan eventually believes her and allows her to return to Budapest, carry out her initial mission of locating marble. Upon her return with Nate, Dominika spends a romantic evening with him at his home, but in the middle of the night she wakes up to discover Constantine torturing Nate in order to obtain Marvel's identity. At first, Dominika feigns complicity with Constantine and even assists in inflicting harm on Nate, but when he is distracted, she assaults him. He enables Nate to break free from his restraints, and the two then team up against Constantine, taking him down but suffering serious injuries in the process. In the next scene, Dominika wakes up in the hospital, where she receives a surprise visit from General Vladimir, who reveals himself as the mole Marble. Vladimir, a former patriotic official, admits that he became disillusioned with Russia's pervasive corruption after his father died. Sick wife was denied treatment from an American doctor for fear that he would be apprehended and his sacrifice would be in vain. Vladimir tells Dominika that exposing him to Ivan will make her a national hero and allow her to replace him as a mole. Dominika finds the concept ludicrous, but after much persuasion, she chooses to give herself into the police. She requests to speak with the Russian ambassador, and when her request is granted, she explains why has the mole's name but will only reveal it in exchange for her freedom. In the aftermath of the conversation, an exchange meeting is scheduled at an airport. Nate is assigned to accompany Dominika in order to confirm the mole's identity. He is deeply upset as he feels used and betrayed by Dominika's actions. He feels used. That's rich, but she is a surprise for him. Shortly after, the Russians approached them with the mole, whose face when it is revealed that Dominika had been inventing evidence to incriminate her uncle ever since she arrived in Budapest and even blamed him for the failed exchange in London. Shocked, Nate swiftly verifies Ivan as the mole, and shortly after the exchange, Ivan is shot by a Russian sniper. After the exchange, Dominika is taken away in a helicopter, and in the final image, we see her being recognized in a Russian military ceremony attended by Nate. General Vladimir. Dominika is now enjoying a happy and free life with her mother, something she had always desired. Subscribe for more videos like this. Set on notifications, and leave a like to support the channel.